All right, we will call our city council meeting to order. We'll just, I'll talk about who's absent in a second. We'll go ahead and start with Pledge of Allegiance by Dane Linton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'd like to excuse Mayor Palmer. He and his family are on vacation. Probably deserves that. He's a pretty hardworking guy for the city. And Councilman Henderson is joining us remotely. He's kind of gone in and out with some technical things, but he's got the cooties, I guess, so he's going to be home tonight. So moving on, item 5.2, City Council comments and recognitions. Councilman Henderson? Okay. Moving on, item 6, public comment. Audience members may bring any item within the city's purview to the City Council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.org or by visiting harriman.org/agendas and minutes, where there is a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement will be incorporated into the public record. I have a few comment forms here. We will start with Diane Karchner. We'd be happy to. Steve, if you would like to. Absolutely. No problem at all. Steve, if you'd like to start us off, we'd be glad to have you come up.
My name's Steve Karchner. I live here in Harriman. On 3/10/24, we received a notice of encroachment. After constructing and landscaping our home, we had tall weeds growing within about 12.5 feet of our dwelling. And our property backs a gully with significant foliage. With the history of fires, we are concerned of fire danger. My neighbor also had a similar problem. We approached Harriman City with a proposal to allow us to landscape the area between our lot line and the beginning of the slope with sod and sprinkler systems. The slope would allow little or no use by the city of the area to be landscaped. We contacted our city council rep at the time, Nicole Martin, with the request for the aforementioned modification. She saw no problem with us landscaping these areas and with sod and sprinkler systems, provided that no other structures were built on the property. After approval, we proceeded to install sod and sprinkler systems, which still exist without any structures. We believe that Ms. Martin had authority to provide authorization. A few years passed and we received a notice of encroachment. We contacted the past city manager, Brett Wood, to affirm that we had permission for these improvements. He visited our sites, viewed them, and after explanation of the prior permission and purpose of fire buffer, he stated that he saw no problem for our continued use as they were developed. So now we have twice received permission by city officials for the initial landscape and continued use. Recently, I was getting insurance quotes. Geico and Progressive Insurance told me that they have ceased providing home insurance for our home due to the perceived fire danger based on reports and satellite images. We received the last encroachment notice in March. I am very concerned that if the city forces us to remove this buffer area with weeds and will grow again near our dwellings, and that my home will become uninsurable. Future satellite images with weeds feet away may prompt additional companies to reject our application. If this happens, my home could not be sold. Could I just finish, just have a couple more sentences? Could not be sold, as no mortgage company will provide financing without insurance. My home would not be marketable to anyone and would require disclosure of uninsurability. Lack of insurance would also put me at risk for other mishaps, damage, or personal liability issues arising. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane.
My name is Diane Karchner, and I also live in Harriman. A few days ago, my husband met with Matt Brooks, the city attorney. He explained that the city is now dealing with about 90 properties for encroachment and asked if he thought it would be fair to make them remove their encroachments and not ours. There is a difference between our situation and most of the others. We recognized our predicament, approached city officials, and obtained permission for the improvements made. Most others likely did not take this path. Thus, I believe we have a basis for being treated differently than most of the others. The prior city officials can be contacted to verify we had prior permission. The possibility will increase in the future for fire in this area due to the continued plans by the city of making the gully a recreation area, attracting more individuals for recreational purposes. Even now, this area has many who ride, walk, and play in the gully below our home. As we know, youth are the cause of many fires due to indiscriminate use of matches, fireworks, etc., not understanding the dangers involved. There are individuals that still ride motorcycles in this area, even though they are prohibited, and all these activities will increase the possibility of fire in the gully. There is some precedence for what we received permission for. In the past, there were dwellings in Juniper Crest community just to the west of us for dwellings that backed the gully, where a number of those homes were actually deeded land to provide them a rear yard buffer between their dwellings and the weeds. We are not asking for the land to be sold or deeded to us, just the ability to maintain our buffer to protect us from fire and the continued ability to obtain dwelling insurance. We humbly ask officials of Harriman City to provide this needed approval so its citizens will have protection from potential fire danger, can maintain our property values and marketability, and have quiet enjoyment of our property.
Thank you. And then I have Dave Goldhart.
Yeah, I'm Dave Goldhart, live 4613 West Brookport Circle. This is the same thing that Steve talked about, this encroachment. I have the same problem. I think we got like 10 feet that we went out on. On the side, we have maybe 6 feet out. And we actually had Jay Wright, the developer, put some boulders along there to keep the soil from sloughing off, because every time water or rain came in, our property would just go. So we have big, huge rocks right there. Some of it's probably, a few feet that's probably city, and all it's on there is gravel. So I just went ahead and gravelled everything, because it was either you have weeds on half of it or gravels, and keep the weeds all the way to where the boulders are. So there's not a whole lot right there. On the backside, it's a little bit more. I have the same worry of the fire danger that we have in our backyard. As you know, that gullies seem to track fires. I don't know if you know, Dempledale does it every year. They have problems. I see fireworks every summer down there that I'm worried that we're going to catch fire. I have a trailer on the side of my house, so I'm afraid that it will catch fire. So I think this is really important. Like I said, Nicole Martin was on the city council at the time, did say she didn't think it was a problem, and then later on we did get notified that we were encroaching, and we had Brent Woods, the city manager at that point, come out and tell us that it was fine, and that he didn't see why there was reason to understand the problem of it being a fire danger in that place. And so we went on that. Later on, the city called and agreed and told us the case was dropped at that point. So we thought we were acting in good faith. It's not like we're trying to steal the city's property. I couldn't care less. I mean, it's either I save money on not watering the place, or or keeping it nice. It's just grass. So hopefully that we can get the city council, if there is a problem, to come out and please come and look at it and see what the problem really is. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, all of us have been copied with the packet, so thank you for doing that. In general, we can't take action or necessarily discuss things in too much, but we are allowed to give feedback on topics. Do you guys have any comments you want to make, or?
I don't personally. I think I think that we definitely need to take a quick little visit out along this property and understand it. It's difficult. It's like what Matt said, like you had reiterated, as far as you have to be really careful because you have to treat everybody fair and equitable. But I understand, there can be extenuating circumstances and things like that. So we'll just have to have a discussion about it. I assume these will come back before us.
So actually, these go in front of the hearing officer, so you would have to make some zone change and do some other issues. So these are all on the enforcement side right
Okay.
now. We'd have to visit with the city attorney how that works.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little, I don't know for sure. So is there something that we should do to proceed if we wanted to take these under advisement further, or?
Because it's going before an ALJ, then the ALJ is going to do its process. And it's going to see what the code says and enforce the code. If the council wanted to do something like enter into a lease or deed the property, that's a separate thing that you can discuss. And we've had a lot of these requests, as you know, come up over the years, and we've been given direction by the council to go this route of enforcement, and that's why we got the administrative law judge enforcing our administrative code.
Yeah. So there's obviously a process working its way through. Any resolution that comes as part of that process is a separate process than any action that as a city council we might consider in terms of land use. Land use decisions over the city are the purveyance of the 5-member council. As a body, we have that authority given to us. And so not one of us individually has the authority to make those decisions, nor is that given administratively to the city manager, except under very specific circumstances that are outlined in agreements and things like that. So not that you've acted in bad faith or that there's anything like that. As a matter of fact, I think you guys have been, you've done everything you thought was right to address the concerns that you have. I do think when we make decisions, we're trying to make decisions on a whole. We didn't review 90 individual cases. We kind of made a blanket policy about how we wanted these to be dealt with, knowing that there would be individual complications and situations. But I think as a council, it's something for us to discuss and look at and see. You go out and see the issue firsthand. I think that's always important for us to see how those things work, and then, probably discuss if there's further action we want to take or supplemental action we want to take. But I talked to Mr. Kirchner on the phone, and I actually encouraged him and his wife to come and make comments to bring the issue before the council as a whole. I think it's a great opportunity for the public to bring items to our attention that are of concern, and I'm grateful that they came out tonight to share their thoughts and feelings about it and prepare all this information. So again, it's going to be a process, not an event. So we appreciate your patience as we work through and deliberate over what we may or may not do going forward. I can't make any promises one way or the other.
Yeah, and thank you for the information, for the pictures. Pictures are great. I still have to come and see it with my own eyes and understand exactly where it is and things like that. So I commit to you that I will definitely do that. And so thank you for coming. And again, like Steve said, it's so important to come and talk. And if it makes sense, then we need to sit down with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Public, anything online tonight? Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments, we will move on to item 7, City Council reports. Councilmember Henderson.
So we had the sewer board meeting yesterday. We had a couple, let me pull it up. We are looking at a couple different things, possibly even a district name change to help differentiate us because we get lots of calls for Jordan Water Valley, Jordan Basin Valley, Jordan. So we're doing that. So you may see a name change coming soon from that. We did enter into a reimbursement agreement for South Hills for a section of the pipe. So that should be coming shortly. You'll see that building going up. And then we also had an audit committee meeting. I'm on their audit committee as well. We had that last week, and we had 3 grown men eat lunch for less than $30, so that's pretty good. Our finance director would be happy with
That's
us.
an accomplishment all on its
So,
own,
I
yeah.
know, so, and that's, I think that's it on my reports. Oh, other than the city audit committee, we've got some RFPs back, and we did a good, Kyle gave us lots of homework, let's say that, so we appreciate that.
We had the Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling Board meeting on Monday. Just moving along well. The only one report was from Momentum, which they are actually the company that does the subscription glass pickup. They also are doing a food pickup in kind of up on the east end of the valley. It's not making its way here yet because economies of scale. They have trucks up there and it's making sense, but it's growing. So that was an interesting report, and hopefully we'll see that continuing to creep and be able to at some point access that service as well, so that we reduce things at the landfill. They put it in stomachs and they just extract the methane out of it. It goes directly into the Dominion pipes. So it's a great process, and it's a better use, obviously, and then whatever's left after that is used as a fertilizer product. So it's a really great method of recycling, wasted food and things of that nature. So I hope it continues to grow and we see it throughout the whole valley, not just the east side. And that's all.
Just a couple comments. I had a resident reach out to me personally asking about products that I had mentioned for the mosquitoes abatement, and she said, "Can you tell me what I need to go buy so I can spray for mosquitoes in my yard?" It was an opportunity to explain that part of your property taxes go to pay for a mosquito abatement district, and they have best products and practices to come out and help abate those mosquitoes, to identify the species of mosquitoes you have, tell you whether there's dangers from West Nile virus, talk to you about how to treat your property if you have standing water, mosquito fish, which is still one of the coolest things. And she was just shocked to hear that that's a benefit that she had available. So she called him up and they sent somebody out to come talk to her about her property, and she was very excited about that. So it was just an opportunity for me to remind everybody that you do pay taxes for the mosquito abatement district, and if you are having a mosquito problem, it's already paid for
Yay.
through your taxes. One other, I guess this is kind of a combination between 5.2 and this, but there's been a lot of social media feedback about the parking fees up at Black Ridge. And it was surprising to me to see and hear some of the comments and some of the things that were made. Well, it doesn't surprise me anymore. But it's just another reminder the public needs to be engaged. Everybody has a responsibility to get informed. There's so much information that the city publishes and pushes out. We do podcasts, we do videos, we have agendas, we have public meetings and records, minutes that are all published. All of our agendas are public. None of these decisions are secret or hidden. We've discussed Black Ridge, I don't even know how many times. Every year there's new discussions and new problems, and I think the mayor said it well in his recap from our last meeting, where he said, none of the solutions are perfect. There's pros and cons to everything that we do. And we recognize that for every decision we make, there's going to be people who are positively impacted and negatively impacted. We just understand that. But really the issue is on weekends and holidays, it became a police enforcement issue. We had to have countless hours of overtime, 3 different officers up there all weekend long. We've had, how could I say this? Maybe some undesirable elements coming into our community and stirring up trouble and occupying the park until late in the evenings. And so again, if people want to understand our rationale behind these decisions, how we do it, it's all public. We invite you to do a little research, find out what's going on. You're welcome to call any of us individually and discuss it. It just seems like that's a skill that's slowly eroding from our society, is to engage with somebody and ask questions and talk about the issue, when you can just go on social media and blast people for something that is, not accurate. So
With partial information.
yeah. So
And
anyway, encourage everybody to come out to city council meetings, watch us online, read the minutes, interact with your council members. This is your government, not ours. And in the absence of your input, we're doing the best we can. We'd sure encourage you to come and give your input before we make those decisions. So
Yeah, I'll echo that. I know, and I commented on some of the comments. Facebook is not an official comment platform, period. It is just a social place people can go and share comments they want to, but it changes nothing at this city. We cannot, it's not entered into any official record. When that decision was made, there was not a single person come in here. I never got any phone calls or any emails about it. Did you guys? And there was nothing submitted formally to our city recorder that I remember seeing, or nothing until after it passes, and then it's like too late. I mean, you could still come in and talk about it even after that, but you have to come in, or you have to reach out to each one, to one of us. And then the same as tonight. There's a few people here, I'm not sure that any of them are here to talk about the public hearing in consideration of water rates. It's gonna affect everyone in the city that lives here, the water rates. But what will happen is a lot of people will be super mad after they get their bill, but the time to talk about it and really come to an understanding about it is before it even happens. The public hearings are exactly that, public. For a hearing, all of our meetings are open and public, so please, please, when you see those notices come out on our social media, those are to inform you that now is the time for your voice to be heard. So we're your representatives, and we're trying hard to be responsible about that. And I know that when decisions are made, it's easy to question us, but if you're questioning the decisions we make, just call and ask us. Give us an email, because all of us want to represent you according to your desires, or what makes most sense anyway. Sorry.
well, sometimes those don't align, but we're also making decisions for the city as a whole,
Yeah.
not just for individuals, but that's why we have districts, so that there's areas that are represented. That's why each district has a council representative they can talk to and share their ideas and stuff. And for example, tonight, the Karchners had called me about the issue. I reached out and returned his call. We talked about some of his concerns, and I encouraged them to please come to a public meeting. That's what it's for. There's an opportunity to present your information to the whole council, and that's exactly what they did. I'm very pleased that they came and did that tonight. But
Super good.
I wish we had a half hour, 40 minutes of people coming in and making comments and sharing their ideas and telling what was going on.
Yeah.
I think it would be so much more beneficial to the quality of government that we get. So
Yeah, and I think you hear the full explanation and understand why the decisions are made the way they are, rather than just partial information that you get on Facebook, and you can never truly understand something there.
And just for the record, I think the public should understand, we're actually we'll be having a policy discussion about this tonight, about moving items more to the general meeting as opposed to just our work meeting, because a lot of times we're making decisions in here and it seems a little quick, or that we haven't had a long discussion about it, when in fact it may have been 2 or 3 work meetings where we've had hours of discussions before we come to a decision. We're trying to move that into the general meeting as a efficiency issue for the city, as a transparency issue for the public. So we're doing what we can. We need the public to do what they can too, so. All right. Item number 9, public hearing. Public hearing and consideration of a resolution approving amendments to the City of Harriman's water and secondary water rates. Kyle, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just to give you a brief background before we have our presenter come up, we started our water rate study back in February 2023. From there, we're using the same consultant that also did our water master plan update, so they were able to work on the 2 projects simultaneously. Through that process, we've gotten some council feedback on some certain things, and then in end of February, we did discuss what staff's proposal is for the rate increase. So I will turn the time over to Keith Larson with Bowen Collins to go through that in more detail.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. Appreciate being back with the council today. This is going to be a little bit similar to what we looked at in our work session, but I think it might be useful for the public to be able to see where our discussion was. So, see where there we go. Okay, so really quick, what we're going to try to accomplish tonight is look at 3 different things. Number 1, what should your water rate structure look like? Regardless of what your revenue needs are, how should we be collecting the revenue for water rates to be able to make it fair and equitable for all your citizens? Number 2, we're going to look at what kind of revenue needs we have coming up and if the existing structure is adequate to support that. And then we'll combine those 2 into some recommended rate alternatives. So let's talk about structure briefly. With the council and staff, we've worked through a number of different issues, but here's the summary of the things that we found. We're recommending 5, not major changes, but adjustments to the existing rate structure to more fairly capture the cost of service of providing water. Number 1 is to adjust your volume breaks, specifically relative to upper tiers, and we're going to look at that in a little more detail in just a second. Also adjust your tier costs to match the actual cost of service of providing the water. We'll also look at that. For larger water meters, we're making some minor adjustments to match capacity ratios as published by the American Water Works Association. We're also looking at a few minor changes to simplify your rates. You had a few rates that ended up being a little bit duplicative, so we're going to combine some of those to make it simpler to administer. And then number 5, we're also adding a volumetric rates schedule for Olympia Hills, and that is specifically to cover the direct cost associated with the more expensive water that is being used to service that area that's brought in. So that way, everybody is paying their fair share relative to the water. So let's talk about the first 2 there for just a second. This is a graphic showing where your existing tiers are. Those are the colored bars in the background. And then where historic use has been over the last several years are shown in the line with the lines. You can see the average, median, 25th, 75th, and 90th percentile use there. When we design water rates, what we want to do is make sure that our tiers are providing motivation and encouragement to use water in an effective and prudent way. In times past, your water use has been higher overall, and as a result, you can see that break between Tier 5 and Tier 6 was up at 80,000 gallons per month. With time, that has come down thanks to the efforts of residents in using the water more efficiently. And now, that current break is significantly above where even the 90th percentile user is. What that means is we're losing some of the ability to encourage prudent water use. And so our suggestion is to lower that break from 80,000 to 70,000. That will not affect 90% of your residents, but it will provide a little bit of encouragement for those highest water users during those peak months to use their water efficiently. In doing that, we're also suggesting that you raise the tier break between 4 and 5 from 40,000 to 45,000 gallons, and that lines up with the 75th percentile, which is best practices when designing rates. Any thoughts, questions on that? Okay, great. So the other thing that we did was once we had that adjustment, we looked at what how those different tiered rates related to each other. So this figure is a little difficult to understand without a little explanation. So the green line at the bottom there represents your current rate schedule in terms of the ratio of each tier to the base rate of tier 1. And that stair step represents that water gets more expensive as you use greater and greater amounts of water. And that makes sense because it costs more to serve water at higher rates and peaks on the system. We have to have more wells turned on, we need storage, we have to have bigger pipes. And so that's why that stair step occurs. We actually did an analysis of a number of different communities of what the actual cost of providing that water is, and that is represented by that gray envelope or range of that's shown on the figure. That's the actual cost of providing water. So what you can see is that your existing tiers are actually below the cost of water at the upper levels. So those who are using large amounts of water are not actually paying the full cost of what it takes to provide that. So our recommendation is that we slide those upper tiers up to where the dashed red line is to capture that actual cost. This will provide some benefit from a conservation standpoint, but the motivation here is not actually conservation. The motivation is to fairly allocate costs between users. As it stands, some of the users who don't use as much water are actually providing a subsidy to those who are using large amounts of water. So that's the second major recommendation in our first structure. Okay, let's talk about revenue needs here for just a second. This is a projection of the city's future needs for revenue in the water system. The bars represent expenditures, and the lines represent different scenarios of revenue. The main thing we want to point out here is if you look at that black line, that is your revenue historically and what it would be moving forward if we didn't make any changes to your rates. What you can see is that that line is falling significantly short of what your expected revenue needs are. When we looked at that, we got a little bit worried and said, well, are we spending too much? That's always a question is, can we cut back? Are we spending too much? Well, we looked at the size of your system and how much it takes to sustainably maintain your system, and that line is represented by the dashed green line up at the top. And so what you can see is that historically you've been pretty close to that, but you're getting hit by a couple of different things. Number one is we all know that there's been significant and major inflation that's happening and has happened over the last several years. The other thing that's happening is your water sales have been going down a little bit on a per capita basis. That's great in the long term. It helps us save a lot of money by not having to build a lot of big infrastructure and secure water sources. But in the short term, it does create a little bit of a revenue gap for us. So we line that all up, and it looks like you do have a couple of front-end capital expenditures as you're a growing city and trying to build that out. But it looks pretty in line here. It looks mostly that just that inflation and the decrease in sales has put you a little bit behind. So what do you do about that? Well, this first thing I'm going to show you is not my recommendation, but we looked at it and we said, what would happen if we just made up that gap right away? And what it would require is an 85% increase, and then we could hold that flat for a bunch of years till we kind of came back in line, but we would have to do that just to cover our expenditures up front. Well, obviously, that's not a great idea. Nobody's looking for an 85% increase in their bill. So what could we do that would be a little more, we could work with the residents a little bit and make it a little more palatable to sustainably bring those funds up. And so here's our proposed plan. What we're showing is a series of moderate rate increases. These, I won't say they're insignificant. These are significant increases, but they're increases that we believe could be sustained by the community. So that would be starting with a 16.3% increase this upcoming year, and then a few years of 13%, going to 7%, and then just settling in at about the rate of inflation of 3%. At least that's where we hope inflation ends up. I will note that anything more than a couple of years out, we do have ability to relook and adjust as we get more information moving forward. But this is the best that the crystal ball can provide at this point.
Question for you. What does that 16% look like on a typical bill? Do we know?
Yes, I will jump to that right here after this. I do want to point out two things. Number one is, if you notice the purple bars, in order to be able to fund these projects but still not jump everything up at the same time, we would need to do some bonding to address immediate needs. And so the purple bars represent 3 separate bonds that we would propose.
I just reiterate what you said also for the public's consumption is, obviously these are projected, 16.3 I don't think is projected. That's going to have to happen. But then the 13, 7, those are all, we're going to look at everything. Every year we can look at this and make sure that we're staying in line with where we need to be.
That's exactly right. I will note one thing that I do know that's coming up is we are in the process of updating your impact fees. If there were to be a change in those revenues, if they were to go up a little bit, that might offset a portion of the increases. If inflation comes down more quickly than we've projected, that might affect it a little bit. The other thing I'll mention just right here is these do look like significant numbers. However, we're preparing this same type of study for dozens of other cities and water districts, and all of them are facing similar recommendations, multiple years of double-digit increases. And it's just because we're trying to catch back up from what's happened over the last several years. Okay, let's get to Councilmember Hodges' question here. Well, one last slide here. We looked at cash flow, and what you can see is you have pretty good cash in 2023. That is a function of some previous bonding you've done. Those projects that was taken out to fund will be completed over the next year or two. After that comes down, and if without a change, you can see the black line is going negative, so the fund goes broke if we don't do anything. But with the proposed increases in our plan, we're able to keep that up and close to the target fund balance that's shown in the kind of the tan bar there. Okay, So this is just a summary of the two items we looked at. Obviously, we're recommending alternative 2.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was there ever a discussion of what the rates would need to be without bonding?
That's essentially, without the bonding is essentially the 85%.
There's no steady increase option absent bonding?
No.
Okay.
Because of the CIPs, because of the infrastructure.
Yes, yeah. The only option that you would have is, with that's not bonding, is to defer projects. And there's 2 problems with that. One is you've already made commitments in certain areas that require many of those projects. And then also, you would not be able to support any additional growth beyond that without those projects happening. Okay. This is just a summary of what I've already talked about, so I won't spend too much time on that. I want to get to this slide. This is the impact on the typical customer of these proposed changes. I'm going to stay over, the orange represents secondary customers, and that's their secondary water component only. I'm going to stay over on the blue. This is residential customers without secondary access, so that would be the majority of your customers. We've decided to look at a lower end user, average user, high user, and a very high user, representing a 90th percentile type user. What you can see in 2024 is what their current annual bill for water is, and then with the change, what it would be moving forward based on those numbers. If you remember, the overall increase was a little over 16%. The average user is actually only going to see a 12.2% increase. And the reason for that is because of those shifts in the tiers. So we're collecting more money on the upper end, which allows the average user not to be subsidizing those higher water users. So the very high user is seeing a 19.8% increase, but therein is the trade-off. After those initial adjustments are made in 2025, then it's just a straight increase based on the projections that we had there. The other thing that I will mention is when we last met, I had identified an initial 13% increase. The council provided me some guidance that we didn't want to implement that in the middle of the summer. We wanted to push that back until October or so. I think that's a wise decision, but what it does mean is that we miss out on a few months of revenue, so we end up having to go a little bit higher to get the revenue we need to cover our expenses and our bonds, our bond coverage. I think that's everything I have. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
No, I'll kind of just reiterate what Steve said earlier. This is not the first time that this council has seen this presentation. We've deliberated this, so if you don't hear a ton of conversation here tonight, it's because we've had a look at this and mill it over and be sad about it, or whatever you want to say. But and we're all residents here too, so we get impacted the same.
Thanks for that slide. I was just confused about the average of the 16.5% or whatever that was spread. But again, 12.7%, it's not a huge increase, but it's definitely an increase to the lower and average user. And any money out of your pocket right now is very tight and tough. And we, as a council, like Sherry, it's our yards too. It's our property that we get billed the same. I'm on the lower end because I did some artificial turf, but still I have some water I use outside, I use water inside, and I'm only on culinary. So It's going to affect my household budget just as well as all our constituents, and we take that under high consideration. I mean, this is probably, we started this rate study months and months and months ago, so this is not the first time we've seen it, so.
Yeah, and water is, you don't live without it, so it's so hard when you have to keep raising the cost of it. I am grateful to do the tier adjustment, though, because I don't believe any user should be subsidizing a higher end user. I think that should be definitely brought back in line, so I appreciate that a ton, that I think you just have to understand that we have to pay for what we use, and there's just a cost associated with it.
One thing I'd just like to point out that I think they've done really well versus maybe our last study that was done, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, is taking into account maintaining this system. We're a young city, so we've had a lot of new infrastructure, but it is starting to age. We are starting to see where we need to go do repairs and fix existing systems. And I was talking with our community development director today, bemoaning the fact that a few years ago, 5, 10 years ago, when you'd do a project, you'd say, well, it's $30 to $50 a foot for a pipe. And now it's $130 to $150 for that same pipe. And it's really 5, 8 years that we've seen those kinds of increases. And so as we have to go out and repair, we're also getting hit. We're now starting to deal with older items, and costs have increased, both materials, staff, the lead times for these pipes, which also increases costs. So there's just a lot hitting right now as we start to move out of our teenage years and become a fully grown city.
I know nobody loves a rate increase, but water is still one of the best values out there in terms of what we get. For the average user, you're looking at $2 a day to drink, to wash your dishes, to shower, to water your lawn. Still a pretty darn good deal.
Yeah.
Even at the 85%, I mean, it's like about $1,000 a year and still value, but.
Everything compounds is the problem,
Yeah, I
because everybody's budget's compounded by the inflation. too.
understand, not to downplay the difficulty of an increase.
No, I appreciate that. It's very true.
So just a couple questions. In the staff report, it talked about some of the reasons for the increases in expenses, and it listed capital expenses, increased costs associated with the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District purchases, rehabilitation and replacement, inflation. One of the things that it doesn't discuss in here and that I didn't see outlined is personnel and the cost of additional personnel, equipment that's needed, cost. What percentage of these increase, maybe that's even a hard question to ask, but how much is needed in terms of human capital and investment there to keep up with this growing system?
Anyone from the city want to address that? I can tell you the overall number in terms of, if I were to take the 16% and say what portion of that is personnel, it's a relatively small portion, 2-3%. The capital side is a much larger portion. But
I would, so part of this, so this sets rates really driven by our capital, our operational expenses to fix things. We are looking at our staffing model to make sure that, one, we're not overstaffed. I think people are concerned about. We also want to make sure we're not understaffed. Having once managed a city that had a salmonella outbreak in our water system because we had chosen over 15 to 20 years to really underinvest, that was pretty traumatic. So you don't want to do that. So we need to make sure that we are realistic in what we can support with our rates. The reality is there are going to be fewer people just as populations change, and so we'll be looking at technology as well. How do we use technology to make some of these decisions? We were actually exchanging some articles this week where some cities are using artificial intelligence to predict where their pipe pipes are going to fail next, and they're actually trying to get ahead and fix that or budget for it. So it's, there's some interesting things coming.
With the prompt on that AI.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this too, in relation to our broadband infrastructure conversations, right? About how the need to connect meters and monitoring and, you know, all of that stuff to via a network so that it can be better managed and be more efficient. And, you know, those are going to impact what those future increases may look like as well. So, yes, my mom was famous for saying life's full of little trade-offs. Some of these are some big trade-offs. I mean, these are expensive.
Yep.
Yeah, we could go on and on about this for a long time. The one thing that I think I'd like to hear a comment on for the sake of the public's consumption and understanding is, for years, the fees that were charged were adequately meeting the expenses of the water fund, or close to. And now we're saying that in order to sustain it over the next 10 years, we're going to be looking at, you know, an 80 to 100% increase when you take all those extra percentages out. Why isn't the new growth that's coming paying for the impacts that it's having on the water system? Why isn't it paying for itself? Why is everybody having to pay so much more in order to facilitate this new development and the new growth and the new capital expenditures that are coming?
Yeah, I would add on just the question, because it's my understanding a little bit, it's because we hadn't calculated properly for O&M, that the failing infrastructure as it aged and things like that too. Would that be correct? And I would ask if that's correct.
I think that's going to be,
Yeah.
I hope that's part of the answer, but.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's see. What I would say is the state of Utah has developed an Impact Fees Act, which dictates how we calculate the costs that we charge to new development. The goal of that law is to make sure that everybody is paying their fair share. We could have a little bit of debate whether all components of it are exactly fair, but we are actually going through that process right now, and we are making sure that new growth will pay for their fair share. So the rate increases that we're looking at right now are not associated with existing users paying for new growth. We need to be very clear on that. I will note that sometimes there is a bit of a cash flow issue. For example, if we need to put a pipe in a road, we don't want to put in a pipe that's too small and then have to dig it up later when new growth comes. It makes sense for everybody that we put in a little bit larger pipe. And for that reason, there is a little bit of infrastructure up front that will need to be paid for by existing residents. However, they will be paid back for that over time. And that is one other reason that I think the bonding recommendation is wise, in that it helps spread out some of that cost and helps those future users better align with the costs that they're incurring on the system. Really, this increase is not about new growth. It is about those other issues that you've talked about. Inflation, specifically on the capital side. As the city manager mentioned, capital costs have gone up about 3 times as much as the general consumer price index. Over the last 5 years, consumer price index is just up under 30%. Capital costs are up almost 90% during that same 5-year period. And so that's the That's probably the biggest item, along with the items you mentioned, Jordan Valley going up 5% a year. They're facing the same pressures that everybody else is facing. So all those things are compounding. I don't know if I completely answered your question.
No, I think that is an important thing. So how are we ensuring that new growth is paying for the infrastructure and the operation of the new system? I think I have some answers to this internally, but I'd like it for public consumption
Yeah.
here that's not a part of a work meeting conversation. So
Great. So two items. Number one, as I mentioned, we didn't spend any time on it, but we have specifically looked at the Olympia development. And because they are bringing in a more expensive source of water, that is reflected directly in the rates. So there is a separate recommended rates schedule for Olympia, such that they're paying the full cost of their water, and existing residents are not being asked to pay for any additional water costs or O&M associated with that development. Number two is we'll be back here shortly to talk impact fees. And the impact fee process, we set up a computer model of all the demands in the city, both existing and projected future. Once we do that, we are able to identify the exact cost associated with building infrastructure associated with development. As I mentioned, that's guided by state law, how we do that, and it's sort of a long, detailed process. But we go through and we identify this pipe is 80% for existing and 20% for growth, or 70% for growth, 30% for existing. We do the same thing with tanks, booster stations, water sources, and those costs are all allocated to the various groups. So ultimately, once we build that infrastructure, that price, that cost will be fairly allocated to each group. I'll remind you when we come back to talk about that, of the importance of accepting the full impact fee to make sure that new growth is paying for their portion. But it sounds to me like you already understand the importance of doing that.
Two follow-up questions. Number one, can you clarify that in the past, whether or not the previous councils have voted to accept the full impact fees? And then secondly, we've all bemoaned the impact fee system as inadequate to meet the costs of the actual costs of increases. By the time the process is completed, the analysis is done, and those fees are collected, it's 6 or 8 years behind what the actual costs are, and we see how inflation erodes that, the impact of that money. So we have, as a council, discussed and deliberated and even advocated for the use of PIDs for new developments. The second part of that question would be, how can you explain how these public infrastructure districts will impact, because there won't be impact fees collected in those areas where there's public infrastructure, what the trade-off is and how that would impact costs?
Yeah, so a PID is essentially a method of collecting money for infrastructure, just like impact fees. But instead of the city being the bank to build the infrastructure and then being reimbursed or paid for by impact fees over time, you use the PID as your bank or your financing mechanism. And so in that case, what we do is we shift costs from the impact fee system over into the PID system, and then that is paid for through property taxes of properties associated with that PID system.
One advantage, again, to clarify, and I apologize, these are questions that I think as a council we may know answers to.
Yes.
But I think it's important to have experts giving testimony for the public's input about how and why these things are happening. So just to clarify a statement you just said, that the new capital projects that are constructed inside of a public infrastructure district are paid for exclusively by property taxes on the properties inside the boundaries of the public infrastructure district.
Yeah,
Except for where there's upsizing or stuff like that, but.
correct, right, correct. Yeah,
Maybe I'll answer your first question.
Thank you.
Has past councils approved the full impact fee? And for water, yes, they have.
Okay,
So they've approved the full impact fee on previous impact.
good.
May not be true on all.
On all impact fees, yeah. Just,
and you are right, when we do impact fees, there tends to be a little bit of a delay because they are difficult to calculate and adopt. And I would advocate, I'm not pitching impact fees tonight, but I would advocate that once we do have that updated, we plan in some intermediate inflation amendments to try to address some of those questions or concerns that you've brought up.
great recommendation, thank you.
Some triggers or something?
Yeah, sorry for all the questions and the money. I think it's just, this is it's charging all of our residents more to provide the service that they've been getting. And to understand why those fees are going up, I think it's important to understand that the vast majority of the costs that are associated with these price increases are not to fund new water systems. It's not to build out Olympia or South Hills down here, or any of that. It's not to provide water to those places. It is the cost of providing water and upkeeping the system of the existing residents that are already on the system.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Good point, good point.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's easy to calculate when you understand exactly what you talked about, 90% increase in those types of things. It's just a reality of the world we're living in right now, and until those costs come down, we have to pay them. We can't go, well, we just won't replace that pipe today because it's too expensive today. It's just an essential service. You have to pay the price.
That's right. The choice you have is, do you want a water system that works or do you not? I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we're not buying the fancy new car here. This is just providing the service that your residents expect.
Now, we do part of this is, a chunk of this money is a little bit of a fancy new service because our residents don't like the hard water, and they've asked us not to utilize Harriman water during the winter. And so we're going to spend the extra money to get it from Jordan Valley. So there is a little bit of a upgrade here.
True.
It's not just bare service to, of quality water still, but not to the expectations of our residents. So this is partly due to that. There is a portion of costs here that provides, less TDS in the water. Still, we were still providing good quality water, but they would like a little bit better quality water. So there is a portion of the cost here that's associated with that.
Hopefully they can save money on appliances and
Right.
clothes and washing
Right.
and dishes. And
That's all you need, all that stuff.
there's a couple things, like, it kind of was a small perfect storm to where our water fund was okay, but then you had inflation and you had conservation on top of that where and then our rates, we weren't paying totally right. And then we had increase in water fees from other outside sources and entities. So it all compounded this last 2-3 years. And you could see that in that graph of, like, we need to make a change, so.
And I think, Teddy, to add on to that one comment that Nathan made was, there was also identification of the fact that the fee structure wasn't anticipating the operation and replacement costs that were going to be coming. And so even if there was nothing else, that would have to be increased just to keep up with the maintenance of the system, combined with everything else you just said.
Yeah. And we don't look at it, I mean, this isn't in a microscope or a small little bubble, like, oh, it's just water. We're looking at how it's affecting everything, so.
Yeah, it is. The unfortunate consequences of inflation are affecting every aspect of our economy, right?
Yep.
Some of them have showed up immediately, you know, in the grocery store and, you know, gas pumps and stuff, and some of it takes a little while to trickle through. Increased taxes, increased fees for services. Everything is just more. And unfortunately, as a city, this is one of the key things we have to provide, and it has to be paid for, and it's,
Yeah, I know, it's been a topic of the last 3 or 4 Heroinologies, what is it called? Heroin, the podcast? Heroinology.
yeah.
That's,
Any other questions?
No, thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we will proceed to opening the public hearing, and anyone who wants to come forward is welcome.
Do we need a motion, Jackie, for that, or no? Okay, cool.
Any comments online?
Would you like a motion?
I think we've already made the commentary on this earlier. So, yeah, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any discussion among the council?
No, I think, I mean, it's a tough decision because it affects every citizen in the city and business owner. And so it's not something we take lightly.
Councilmember Henderson, do you have any comments to make? You and I talked earlier today. I think we addressed your question.
Agree.
Yeah, and I think a comment would be that those percentage increases being what they are largely to cover the cost of the bonds that we're borrowing to cover those debt service obligations that we're going to have, you know, on a go-forward basis, rather than massive increases all up front or huge, you know, capital investments that we have to make. We're phasing it in over several years. So, any other comments? Okay, I'll
make a motion
Motion.
to approve resolution number R11-2024, approving an amendment to the master fee schedule relating to water and secondary water rates.
Second.
we'll do a roll call vote. Jared? Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. The motion passes. Item number 10, consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second?
We'll have to do a roll call vote. Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Jared? I'll vote yes as well. Item number 11, discussion and action items. Resolution adopting a council policy LP-041-003, establishing a policy on when items would require a work meeting. Nathan.
Members of council, several months ago, I guess, there was a discussion about let's have a policy about when items go to a work meeting, as it seemed that there was a delay. I'm actually quite happy that conversation then turned to, we should do more of these discussions in the regular meeting. That is more along what I have seen throughout my career. So the policy you have in front of you changed quite a bit from the one that was in the work meeting, because really it just says, here's when we go to work meeting, most items are going to come here. And we should always, and council always has the option to send it to a work meeting. from this, if you're in a meeting here, you don't want to make a decision, you can continue it, this policy doesn't limit that, it's just to guide staff on when we think we might need a work meeting first, or some that are, if it's just truly informational, there's never going to be a decision. Sometimes we bring things to you, hey, this is going on, we might do those in work meetings just to keep this meeting more business-oriented. So happy to answer any questions about the policy that's in front of you.
No, I appreciate the change. I think that's important, and I think it's what Steve even mentioned earlier, just about every meeting we have is recorded in public. Anybody can watch the whole work meeting or this meeting is exact same. But I think that there's a more focus on this meeting, and I think it's important that we deliberate more in this meeting because I think more people watch this or pay attention to this. So it's a good change.
Agreed.
I concur.
Want a motion?
Yeah, let's move on.
Make a motion to approve resolution number R12-2024, establishing procedures for work meeting agenda items.
Second.
Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared? I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes. Item 11.2, discussion and consideration of impact fee agreement with Mountainview Plaza LLC for the construction of roadway improvements for Harriman Auto Row and Miller Crossing Drive.
Thank you. So about 1 month ago, city council meeting, in the work meeting, we discussed a request from the developer of the Mountainview Plaza project, which is located on the north end of the Auto Mall, southeast corner of Main Street and Miller Crossing Drive. Received a request to not charge impact fees to their project, transportation impact fees specifically. And the reason for this is, as you can see on the exhibit, the Auto Mall Public Infrastructure District is surrounding the Mountainview Plaza project, which they have budgeted to complete the roads except for the half road width around this project. And so the request was to not pay the transportation impact fees. In the council work meeting, we discussed preparing an agreement as such to outline the terms and requirements for both parties in that. So in your packet, there was a draft agreement, and the terms of that are shown here on the left. And the main thing I wanted to point out was I originally drafted the agreement for the completion date a few years out, and the developer requested that it be pushed up even to October of this year. We added a little bit extra just in case, but discussions before this meeting, I was told that the road should be possibly completed by this fall. It's most likely to be completed before this fall, so, which allows them to move forward with their additional buildings. So this request would be to not charge impact fees for all of the buildings shown on this plan, or if they change the plan, any other buildings.
Just transportation impact.
Just transportation, and it is anticipated with our cost estimates and things that we looked at that the cost of constructing the road would be at the same or slightly above what the impact fees would have been anyway.
And if I might, and I think Blake has already, we've talked about this in the work meeting, but just so if this is the first time somebody's logging in and looking, these roads were once eligible for impact fees, and then when they went to the PID, we had to take them out, but there was not really, I don't know how we missed it, but that Mountain View Plaza area.
Lack of clarity on that half road by
that half road, and so we can't use the impact fees to reimburse them, but they have to build it. If it was still eligible, they would have paid us and we'd have given them back. So this is not a giveaway to them, it's just recognizing what they were going to do.
Right.
And catching up, cleaning up.
And either we were paving it or they're paving it.
Correct.
Yeah, we've called that before right-hand, left-hand money, right?
It's usually-
This is just keep your money in your pocket and pay for the road.
Yeah.
It's
Our
usually
other,
cheaper if they pay for it than if a city has to do it, because for somehow if government gets involved, it always costs more money.
Yeah, no kidding.
typically how we do these is a reimbursement agreement with the impact fees. With the PID being in place, it was going to create us being the middleman, and we were going to collect the impact fee and then have to negotiate the completion of the road with the PID. This just took us out of the equation, and the same effect at the end of the day, and actually simpler and easier for the developer to be in control of his own destiny.
It's great to see construction out there too. Every day
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
awesome.
I like it.
Can't wait. Any hints on what's coming?
Great stuff.
Haven't heard of that place yet. It's awesome.
Is it still those first two buildings are likely to be restaurant users?
Building one for sure.
Building one for sure. Awesome. Such
Nice.
good news, yeah.
Sandra and I talk to Aaron a couple of times a week with new leads, so there's a lot of excitement and interest in that site.
Good.
Start paying them real estate commissions.
Make that check payable to Harriman City General Fund, yeah. Any comments from the council?
No, excited for it.
I like it.
Yeah, it's
And
no-brainer.
this item is up for decision tonight, so staff did recommend approval of this agreement.
Awesome.
Your turn.
I'll make a motion. Motion to approve impact fee agreement with Mountainview Plaza LLC for the roadway improvement construction for Harriman Auto Row and Miller Crossing Drive.
Second.
Is this roll call vote?
Yeah. Or
call
no,
vote?
it just says vote.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, motion passes. 11.3, consideration of a purchase agreement with Olympia Ranch LLC for the acquisition of
Thanks, Aaron.
right-of-way for 7300 West from 130th South to 126th South. Blake.
Thank you. Okay, 7300 West. This is the portion that is north of Harriman Main Street and will eventually go to, we'll be discussing this tonight, all the way to Harriman Boulevard through Olympia and Hidden Oaks. So there are several steps I just wanted to go over in the right-of-way acquisition process when we use corridor preservation funds. It's kind of a clunky process working with the county on this. And we apply for the funds, we go to a meeting, we present, they make the decision to recommend the projects at the Public Works COG meeting, and then it goes to the actual COG, and that was completed last November, and we were awarded funds for this project. But the funds don't come to us. We have to go and buy the right-of-way, get our appraisals and things done, and then we enter into this agreement, buy the property, and then we request reimbursement. So earlier on the consent agenda, we had interlocal agreements that completed the end of this process. So tonight, we're right where the arrow's showing, getting this purchase agreement to purchase the right-of-way that's shown here. So the area in yellow was already purchased with corridor preservation funds several years ago in anticipation of this road going north. And above that, you can see the red and the blue areas highlighted. And one of the reasons this was selected for funding by the COG was the developer decided, or chose, or offered up to donate half the acreage and then sell the other half. So it's a half donation, half purchase by the city, and you can see the prices there on the left. It's about 5.5 acres of roadway, which will provide a key connection going to the north into Olympia for the commercial center and people of the Rose Basin area to travel this area. And then I just want to kind of give a little preview at the end here of what's anticipated for this area. So this road was actually funded for construction in the last legislative session. And so we are working through the design of the roadway right now to approve it. The anticipation is we'd be paving all the way from Main Street to 126th next summer. And UDOT will be building a Harriman Boulevard going to the east of this location, the big curve that ties in where Harriman Boulevard currently ends. There's actually another roadway that runs up the center at approximately 130th South, 129th South, somewhere there, from 6400 West to Harriman Boulevard, which is called Olympia Boulevard, which was also funded with legislative funds the previous year. So all those roads are anticipated to be in by next summer, and will provide some key networks and connections through Harriman as this development grows. We always hear that the roads want to be in before the development comes, and we never have that opportunity, but here we do. So this will be interesting to see how it works. This agreement is also on for decision tonight, and staff did recommend approval.
Comments?
Nope. On motion?
I just want to make one comment. During the process of reaching out to the owners and developers of Olympia after some of the contentious discussion during the county's approval, and we were going through a process of considering annexation and their application in the city. I tried to make the point that I believed at that time there would be benefits from cooperating and collaborating with the developer rather than continuing an oppositional position. And that if we were to design together and plan together and work together, there would be benefits for both parties. And I think this is evidence of that kind of a thing, right? Where we're getting money from the legislature that we've never sniffed before, right? And a lot of that credit goes to the lobbying efforts of our partners in Olympia. Kudos to them for doing the legwork, for meeting with the legislators, talking about the growth that's going on out here in the West. The philosophy of putting in the roads before the development happens, creating that connectivity so that we don't have half-built roads and sections. And I think this is some of that coming to fruition. And I'm glad to see it, that we took we made a hard decision in annexing that into the city, and I'm glad to see that there's some benefit coming back to the city from that. So,
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of those points, Steve, that it's definitely working in a team effort on not only this site, but other sites that have been impacted outside of our community with 134th and 126 on Bangor, and then even the Mountain View corridor changes and coming out west here where this finish in 73, connecting that, not only for what it's going to mean for Olympia, but for all the other citizens that are up on that side, and the U111 exchange and all those things. It's a lot of stuff, and there's more to come, obviously, from this developer and from around the city, from what we're going to get from this.
yeah, and I mean, there's definitely differing opinions about development and new stuff coming in, and the county definitely forced everybody's hand there, right? But I don't think that necessarily has to be a lingering bad thing. And I think your point is, Blake, I don't know if you could even maybe total this, but the amount of money that the legislature's approved out there in the last 2 or 3 sessions is $100 million or more now, right?
About 100 million, yes.
$100 million that has come in to help pay for infrastructure that a lot of it, those costs would be falling on the city to build. So it's awesome. Great news. No other, Jared, you got any comments? Okay, I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve a purchase agreement with Olympia Ranch LLC for the right-of-way acquisition located at approximately 7300 West, 1300 South to 12600 South.
Second.
000. Missed a 0.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that motion passes. That is the end of our city council meeting for tonight. Future meetings, there's a planning commission meeting on April 3rd. Next city council meeting will be April 10th. Everybody's anxiously looking forward to this. The Hungry Harriman events is going to start on April 22nd. That'll start out here at Crane Park at 5 o'clock, starting April 22nd, and then it'll be every Monday after that for the rest of the summer. So good stuff happening. Great time to bring your family and friends out and get some of that awesome food truck food, and hopefully it'll be sunny and warm, and winter will be over.
I think that the groundhog said early spring, right?
He did, but then I got 5 inches of snow the other day, so.
Never base your yard on the
All right, it is 8:30, and I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, everybody go home.